small.
When it came to acting, young Ewan had a role model. His uncle, Dennis Lawson, was a working actor.
He would come up from London, having been from Crieff himself, but having moved to London during the 70s, and would be this crazy hippie with sheepskin waistcoats and beads, and very often not wear shoes and have great big handlebar moustaches. And he was just unlike, you know, Crieff is essentially like farming, it's in the middle of farmlands. And there was this incredible character who happened to be my uncle. So I'm sure from a very early age I just wanted to, or I felt the need that it would be good to be different like that. It would be nice to be different. And so I wanted to be an actor. And then by the time I was 9, I remember saying to him, Dennis, I really want to be I want to be an actor. And he said, look, come back to me in 10 years, and if you still want to, we'll talk about it.
I remember him being very serious, and it wasn't, our relationship was never very serious, you know, so I knew that he meant it at that time, but he never wavered from it, never.
From 9 on, I was going to be an actor, and everything since then has been geared towards being one, and being the best one I can be. So school was a bit of a drag for me, because I stupidly didn't think that any of it was very relevant to me, you know. And so it became about music and art and like poetry readings, whatever it was, anywhere I could kind of perform was what school was about to me. So music played a big part of that. I was in the pipe bands, I was a side drummer in the pipe bands. I played the French horn to like all through my schooling, and used to do recitals on that and stuff.
But music wasn't his passion. It was speaking on stage that turned him on.
My first kind of experience of that was at school doing this very long poem, like a 38-verse poem or something. And there was a big centenary or something of the school, and they had this review show. So I went on to do this huge poem. And that was my first taste of it, I think. Because I remember very clearly it was quite funny, and I had to do it in a very strong dialect that wasn't my own. And I made them laugh, and I could kind of get a sense that I could control that a wee bit. And that was very exciting.
By the time he turned 16, Ewan was fed up with school.
I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't, I seemed not to be able to understand anything anymore. And I just kind of was time for me to go. And I didn't realize that, and just got into trouble a lot, really. No, I wasn't a rebel or anything, but I had this kind of attitude problem they kept talking about.
You were elsewhere. You were elsewhere.
I wanted to be doing something else, yeah. And so my mum, I was driving through to the little town where I was brought up with my mum one night in the rain, and she said, you know, listen, I've spoken to your dad, and if you want to leave school now, you can. Now, I'd never even entertained the notion that I might be able to leave early. I never thought about it. I just assumed I would be stuck there for another 1.5 years. And suddenly she said this, and I went, wow, I can get out, and I did.
Here's a revealing fact. Ewan loved the original Star Wars, but what made the movie extra special for him was that his Uncle Dennis played a small role as the rebel pilot Wedge. So Ewan Mcgregor is really a second-generation Star Warrior. When we come back, the naked truth.
There's an incredible power in standing naked in front of a bunch of people.
And later, Ewan's real-life nightmare.
I must just have looked like a man who was going to kill somebody if they stopped me. Thing I considered more than most. And it was purely, I just had to trust my instincts in the end, in that the nearer I got to getting the part, the more I wanted to do it. So I just trusted that. I never really worried about being typecast or anything like that, because I've done a lot of work, and had I not done any work, maybe I'd be more concerned about that. However, I felt I've done enough work that not to be worried about being typecast. And anyway, how could you be typecast as Obi-Wan Kenobi? There's not many parts like that.
On the first day on set with his lightsaber, he was making the noise, you know, going whoosh, whoosh. And, you know, he challenges anybody to say, listen, you're given a lightsaber, who isn't going to make the noise? But people didn't, except he did.
And then there were the fans.
You do get some very extreme kind of fanatical Star Wars people, which is fine, but I don't particularly have anything to do with them. They you know, more and more now, it's to do with making money, which is unfortunate. And most of the people who come up and ask me to sign Star Wars stuff are selling it on the internet.
Right.
And I know that. And so that's boring, because if somebody comes up and asks for me to sign something, I'm more than happy to do that. You know, I like my work being appreciated by people. Otherwise, why would I do it, you know? So when you know that this guy is only selling this stuff, it's a shame. He's taking something away from me that should be quite a nice experience.
Coming up on Revealed, Ewan meets his match.
This is Nicole Kidman, you know, this is Ewan McGregor, you know.
In 1998, Ewan McGregor was a bona fide film star in Great Britain and a rising star in the U.S., but he took a break from movies to appear in the London stage production of Little Malcolm and His Struggle Against the Eunuchs. Ewan's uncle Dennis Lawson directed the play.
As an uncle and nephew, it's a really special relationship to me. And I asked him, because I wanted to go back on the stage, and asked him to direct it, because I thought, I haven't done it for 7 years, I'll be so frightened, you know, and I was terrified. So I thought, well, at least if he's there, that'll feel good.
We were doing a dress rehearsal or something, and he said to me, "Because I'm so nervous." And I said, "Well, you will be nervous." And that's all I said to him, and he was so furious. That's all I could say.
Nervous or not, Ewan's performance was a hit with both critics and theater fans. In the audience was director Baz Luhrmann, who was casting a new movie musical called Moulin Rouge. Luhrmann was searching for an actor to play the very demanding lead role of Christian.
He ends there. He ends as Montgomery Clift, if you like. He ends as a wounded being. But he must begin as an extraordinary, innocent, wide-eyed, and vulnerable. That is an extraordinary acting range. And of course he had to sing and dance as well. So, you know, in anyone's book, it was an extraordinary challenge. And what was extraordinary was that here was an actor who was on stage in the West End and was really playing a man who could look at the camera, wide-eyed, you know, with a 100-piece orchestra behind him, say "I love you" in that kind of vulnerable innocence that we saw in the movies of the 40s and the 50s.
But the big question was whether Ewan had the singing chops to carry a musical.
He had nodes on his throat, so he sort of sang like this, you know. But interestingly, it wasn't about hiring singers. It was about finding an actor who can convey emotion through song. And even with these funny nodes on his voice, he took an old musical standard, and he was able to convey or extract from me an emotional response by singing.
There was one final test that Ewan needed to pass.
It was about finding the right match for that handful of fireworks called Nicole Kidman. And, you know, because they really had to be Hepburn and Tracy, you know, Burton and Taylor. This is Nicole Kidman, you know, this is Ewan McGregor, you know. And when they hit, you've got this really focused force.
How were you the first day of rehearsals compared to what we saw on screen? Was it a little rusty or bumpy going in the beginning?
Oh yeah, I mean, we came a long way. I mean, in all respects, because it was quite a tall order. We had to reinvent the musical for today's audience. So we had to kind of work out how you do that.
The first day, it was like, you know, the usual chit-chat, let's get to work. Into the room we go, into the rehearsal space, and we probably didn't get to rehearse for a good 2 hours because, you know, boom, it was there. Just the chemistry was there, just the, you know, the firing off each other, the sort of gags, the sort of brother-sister tease, the whole chemistry that you see on screen was there from the moment they started to work.
Baz was very clever, and he made them start singing to each other almost immediately. And so they got over that embarrassment of having to sing and pretend to be in love. I think they had a great time working together.
We rehearsed for like 4 months, and in that time we were doing technical stuff and dancing and singing, but working the group scenes, and all the time Baz was just kind of letting us soak into the world that he was going to create. To have that length of time just meant by the time we got on set, anything was possible, you know. To burst into song was second nature to us, and anything was achievable.